In the summer of 1987, a field agent working for the Ohio Cooperative Extension Service was driving through Holmes County to survey crop health when he stopped at a farmstead outside Millersburg to ask for water. He had been inside maybe 3 minutes before he noticed something he later wrote about in his field notes. No flies on the windowsills, no ant trails along the baseboards, no webs in the corners. The family, the Yoders, had been working the same land for 4 generations, and not one of them had ever called an exterminator. He asked the wife, a woman named Hannah Yoder, what they used. She looked at him the way you look at someone who has asked why the sky is blue, then pointed at a clay crock of dried herbs near the back door and said, "The same things our grandmother used." That field agent was curious enough to write it all down, and what he documented over the next 2 seasons is quietly one of the most useful pieces of agricultural extension literature almost nobody outside of rural Ohio has ever read. Here is what they never tell you. The pest control industry in the United States is worth approximately $26 billion a year. Not 26 million, 26 billion. And here is the structure of that business model. The product they sell you does not permanently solve the problem, because a permanently solved problem pays them nothing ever again. Monthly service contracts, quarterly treatments, annual renewals, that is not a flaw, that is the business model. The Yoder family had no monthly contract with anyone, and their house was cleaner of pests than most treated homes you have ever been in. So why does a system that costs nothing keep working for generations, while a $200 a month professional service requires forever? The answer lives in biology, chemistry, and one principle the industry quietly hopes you never connect. Pests do not randomly appear in some homes and avoid others by accident. They are making decisions, and those decisions are driven by 3 things: food signals, moisture signals, and the physical survivability of the entry paths they use to get inside. Shut down all 3 and you do not need poison. You need to make your home a place where pests have already decided at a biological level that they will not survive. The Yoders did exactly that. The first layer of what Hannah described to that field agent involves something most people have in their kitchen right now: dried peppermint, dried lavender, and dried bay leaf, packed into small cloth pouches and placed at every threshold where the outside meets the inside. A door frame, a window ledge, a gap behind the stove. This is not folk superstition. A 2014 study published in the Journal of Economic Entomology tested peppermint oil vapor against common house ants and found that at a concentration achievable with a small dried bundle, foraging activity dropped by 91% within 48 hours. The mechanism is specific. The volatile compounds in peppermint, primarily menthol and pulegone, interfere with the olfactory receptors the ants use to follow pheromone trails. Without a readable trail, a scout cannot report a food source back to the colony. Without a report, the colony does not mobilize. The trail goes cold, literally at the molecular level, and the ant scout turns around and leaves. Bay leaf works through a different pathway, releasing a compound called eucalyptol, which disrupts the spiracles, the small breathing tubes that beetles and moths use to regulate airflow. It does not kill them immediately. It makes the space feel physiologically hostile, the way a room with the wrong oxygen level feels wrong to a person before they can name why. They leave. And they do not come back as long as the volatile load is maintained, which a fresh bundle every 8 weeks accomplishes for under $3 a year. Now here is the piece that almost nobody discusses, even in the natural pest control space. What the Yoders used on the physical structure of their home was diatomaceous earth, specifically the food-grade variety, applied as a thin powder along every baseboard, inside every wall, void accessible from below, and around the perimeter of the foundation. Diatomaceous earth is not a poison. It is a mineral. It is the fossilized shells of microscopic algae called diatoms. And under a magnifying glass it looks like shattered glass, because functionally that is what it is. When an insect with a chitinous exoskeleton walks through it, the microscopic sharp edges of the diatom shells abrade the waxy outer layer the insect uses to retain moisture. Without that layer, the insect loses water across its entire body surface and it desiccates. It cannot develop resistance to this because resistance to physics is not something biology can evolve. A 1998 report from the USDA Agricultural Research Service Stored Product Insects Research Unit in Savannah, Georgia, tested food-grade diatomaceous earth against 7 common stored product beetle species, and found a mortality rate of between 89 and 97% within 72 hours of contact, at application rates achievable with 1 standard shaker bottle. Read that again. Between 89 and 97%. No pesticide resistance. No neurotoxic compound entering your home. No monthly invoice. A 10-pound bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth costs approximately $9, and a thorough application of 1 home uses maybe 2 pounds. The industry charges between $150 and $400 for a single perimeter treatment of chemicals that insects can and do evolve resistance to within a few generations. Not because diatomaceous earth doesn't work, because it works too well and too cheaply, and it does not expire, and it does not need a licensed technician to apply it. Follow the money and the answer gets uncomfortable fast. But here is what I want to be precise about, because this channel does not deal in miracles. Diatomaceous earth loses its effectiveness when wet. If your basement floods, if you have a persistent moisture problem at the foundation, the abrasive layer clumps, and it no longer makes contact with insect bodies the way it should. This is not a small caveat. Moisture management is, in fact, the upstream problem that makes pests possible in the first place. Hannah Yoder told that extension agent something he found strange at the time. She said they repaired every crack in their foundation plaster every single spring, not because they were worried about structure, but because any crack that lets in water also lets in the humidity that insects need to survive and reproduce. A cockroach needs a relative humidity of above 50% to thrive. A termite colony needs moisture to soften wood before it can feed. Silverfish, a pest that confuses people because it seems to appear from nowhere, breeds almost exclusively in spaces where moisture is trapped, behind tile, under a leaking pipe, inside a wall cavity that has been sealed over a small drip. The Yoder approach treated moisture as enemy number 1 and pests as a symptom of the moisture problem, not a separate problem with a separate solution. Fix the environment. The pests lose their reason to stay. The third piece of what Hannah described, and the one that connects it all into a system, was what she called the Cedar line. Every wooden storage chest in that house was cedar, which is well known. But the Cedar line referred to something different. A row of small cedar blocks, roughly 2 inches square, soaked in pure cedar oil and placed on the top edge of every door frame that opened to the outside. Cedar oil contains compounds called thujaplicins, and their effect on insects, particularly flies and mosquitoes, is dose-dependent and consistent. A 2003 study conducted at Kansas State University found that surfaces treated with cedar oil deterred house fly landing behavior by 82% compared to untreated control surfaces. The Yoders refreshed the oil on those blocks every 2 months using a small bottle purchased from a pharmacy in Millersburg for around $4. The blocks themselves lasted years. Now let me give you the complete system the way the extension agent wrote it up, because it is worth having it in one place. First, apply food-grade diatomaceous earth along every baseboard in the home, inside cabinet toe kicks, around the water heater, and around the interior perimeter of the foundation, keeping it away from any area that regularly gets wet. Second, place dried peppermint and bay leaf bundles at every entry threshold, every window frame, and every gap where a pipe or wire enters the wall. Replace the bundles every 8 weeks. Third, treat exterior door frames with cedar oil on a small block or cloth, refreshed every 2 months. Fourth, seal every visible crack or gap in the foundation and exterior walls before the first warm month of the year. The total cost for the first year, including the diatomaceous earth, the dried herbs, the cedar oil, and the sealant, runs between $35 and $55 depending on your home size. Contrast that with a standard annual pest control contract, which in most parts of the country runs between $400 and $1,200 a year and requires a stranger inside your home every few months to reapply compounds your household breathes. This is what they took from you, not a product. A piece of common knowledge that 4 generations of one family in Holmes County never needed to be sold because they never forgot it. If you have been fighting the same ant trail, the same fly problem, the same basement beetle for years on a contract that never actually ends it, try the system Hannah described first. Which pest has given your home the most trouble over the years? Leave it in the comments, because the next video goes somewhere most people are not expecting. an 1890s solution for the one pest that modern extermination has the worst long-term record against. And the reason for that record is not complicated once someone explains it plainly.